Today we're talking about 4 different flavors of the narcissistic discard. This is so important to understand the differences in their behavior because while they all seem to be cut out of the same mold at times, these slight variances in what they do and how they do it can cause confusion. So that's why I wanted to break it down and show you 4 specific ways or 4 different flavors of the narcissistic discard. Now, I'd be curious to know which ones you're familiar with, so please take a moment to comment in the section below. So the 4 flavors are the romantics, the recyclers, the novelty seekers, and the grudge holders. Again, make sure you let us know in the comment section below which ones you're familiar with. In my personal experience, I've dealt a lot with grudge holders and recyclers. So let's break it down and find out what these kind of discards looks like. The first one we're going to talk about are the recyclers. Recyclers are narcissists that usually value familiarity. Maybe they're part of a team, a club, a church, some kind of a group where they're with the same people on a regular basis. So what happens is they will be super close to person A of the group. They will be best friends. They will be in this love bombing phase where this relationship, this friendship is just amazing. But eventually they begin to see that person A is not perfect. They are flawed. They make mistakes. They may disappoint the narcissist, as imperfect humans we often do with each other. Well, the narcissist can't handle that. So what happens in that kind of a relationship is they will then move on to person B of the group. And that person becomes their everything. That relationship becomes absolutely amazing. Person A is no longer a part of the picture and their whole focus is on person B. And the cycle goes on until finally they've gone through the whole group. So what happens is it's been so long since they've been close with person A that they wind up looking attractive to the narcissist again. They go back to A and the cycle goes on and on. This can happen with friends, like I mentioned, in a group, in a club, but it can also happen with siblings. For example, a narcissistic parent that has 4 children, 3 or 4 children. They'll be super close with child A. As soon as child A disappoints them by not giving in to every demand that they want, or isn't available 24/7, doesn't drop their life for the narcissist, they'll move on to child B. And they will continue on and on until they've run through all of their children only to start back at the beginning once again. Those are the recyclers, okay? Let's go on to the second flavor of narcissistic discards, and that is the romantics. Now this discard is very painful because what happens with a romantic is the narcissist falls in love with somebody. And it's not so much that they're in love with the person, but they're more in love with the idea of having the perfect, and I stress perfect, the perfect partner that everyone is envious of this relationship. The romantic is completely in love with the idea of being in love, with the idea of having a perfect relationship. And so everything is heightened emotionally. You feel as if you found your soulmate. You feel as if you have made the connection that is spoken about only in movies. They paint a picture for you. Maybe they're planning, you've known each other 2 weeks and they're planning this elaborate wedding. They're talking about future children. You have the names picked out of your future child. You have this life of perfection that is placed before you, and it's all fireworks and it's extremely emotional. But as the narcissist gets to know you, they suddenly realize this huge secret. You are imperfect. And at least it's a secret to the narcissist. It's pretty much known to the whole world, but it's secret to the narcissist. So they begin to know you well enough that they now see your flaws. And to a narcissist, to be flawed is to be worthless. And suddenly, this fantasy that you guys have been riding high on comes crashing down, and it usually comes crashing down over something small, an imperfection, a letdown that the narcissist feels, and now suddenly you've gone from wanting everything and planning this amazing life together to the narcissist wanting nothing to do with you. So you've been way on the top and you've just crashed completely down almost overnight. That is extremely difficult to deal with. And on top of it, the narcissist then blames the other party for the discard. They'll say something like, well, I thought you were someone else. And so by saying that they thought they were someone else is basically saying everything would have been fine, everything would have continued amazing had you not been who you are, or had I not seen the real you. So in this way, it makes the discarded person not only have to deal with the pain of having their fantasy bubble burst in front of their eyes, but on top of it, they're blamed for it because of who they are. So it's a very difficult discard to have to endure. The third kind of narcissistic discard is done by novelty seekers. Novelty seekers are narcissists that hate boredom. They are bored very easily, and so they're always jumping from one thing to the next, one person to the next. Their relationships rarely last more than a few weeks, and what happens is they're in love with the chase. They're in love with conquering you. And so oftentimes this can be difficult to handle because that the narcissist chased you. Maybe you weren't interested in for a long time, and that only made the narcissist chase you more because it's the thrill of the catch. They're trophy hunters, right? So the harder it is to get a person, the more narcissistic supply they get by finally getting them. The problem is that narcissistic supply doesn't last very long. It evaporates, and the thrill of the chase is over. They get bored and they want to do it with someone else, okay? So if you were against the relationship in the beginning and you were slowly worn down by this person that was chasing you, that was pursuing you, convincing you that you are the one for him or her, that you guys can have the perfect relationship, and little by little, you wind up falling for this person only to be tossed aside the second you give them what they want, or the second they get bored because now they don't have to chase you anymore, now you are going to them. That's very painful to have to endure. And what can be dangerous about this discard is if you don't recognize this for what it is, then you run the risk of being sucked back in. The second the narcissist is kind of bored, they're lonely, and they just want to reach out, see what you're doing, see if you'll bite. They want to see if you'll react to them. And if you do, they'll reel you back in only to chew you up and spit you out like an old piece of gum all over again. So if you don't realize that you are with a narcissist and facing a narcissistic discard over and over by a novelty seeker, you run the risk of being with this person or waiting for this person or trying to make sense of what happened for a long period of time and really wasting a lot of years on somebody that doesn't care about you as much as they care about the thrill they get by the chase. The fourth flavor of the narcissistic discard is the grudge holder. Now, I bring up this personality because I did a video a long time ago about how the narcissist hoovers, and I got so many comments by people saying, well, my narcissist didn't hoover. Why did my narcissist not act this way? Why did they not seem to care when it was over? Well, you were probably discarded by a grudge holder. A grudge holder is somebody that will not go back to their exes. They get more narcissistic supply by completely cutting the person off than they ever did in the relationship. And the reason for that is because they have themselves fooled into thinking that now that they're not in your life, you're without them, you must be suffering. Your life must be so awful because look what they were able to do. They cut you off completely. And that's their narcissistic supply that they get from that relationship. So the grudge holder never hoovers. The grudge holder completely cuts the person out of their life. And in fact, they probably have a history of family members or friends that may have slighted them or may have done something that hurt them in the past. And years will go by, decades will go by, and they still do not talk to that person, do not bring that person up, or even contemplate that person in a positive light, regardless of what happened, regardless of how big or how small it was. That's how bad the grudge holder holds a grudge. It can be forever, and the extent to their desire for revenge and to give pain to this other person, there is no end to that. So those are the 4 flavors of the narcissistic discard. Remember to comment below and let us know which narcissist you faced in your life. I'm curious to see which narcissists are more common in this community. And I want to talk about the secret to getting over the discard, to dealing with it and never getting sucked back in again. Now, I know a lot of you are saying, Michelle, I already know the secret. The secret is to go no contact and to completely move forward with my life. Well, yes, that's true. I say it's a secret because for the majority of us as children, we were brought up in households where we had to strive to gain the approval, the love, which should have been given to us as children just because we existed. But we didn't get that from our parents. We were taught that we had to try harder, yank ourselves out, our personalities inside out, to give more, to be better in order to get that approval. And what happens when the narcissist discards is it opens up that wound. It opens up that rejection that we felt as children. It thrusts us into the hamster wheel of trying to strive for approval from somebody that dangles it just out of reach. And without realizing it, we enter that hamster wheel, thinking that we can prevent the discard, thinking that we can gain the approval back again and never lose it from the narcissist if we just try harder and harder. That is wrong thinking. That is incorrect, and that's what the narcissist is hoping you will think. Because when you think that way, if and when they decide to come back into your life, you will allow it. And you'll try harder, and you will not care about all the pains that the narcissist inflicted on you. You will simply be trying to gain this approval again. So the secret is to recognize that love should be reciprocal, that you don't need to strive harder and harder for somebody that is unwilling to allow you to feel good enough, for somebody that is unwilling to be pleased by your efforts. That's an unhealthy relationship. When you recognize that that's an unhealthy relationship that is familiar to you, and put a boundary down that states that you will not engage in a relationship that is not reciprocal. A relationship that you are giving and trying to please, and the other person is doing little to nothing to gain your approval. Okay? If you put that boundary down and you realize that you don't want to enter that unhealthy relationship again, you can start making better decisions. You can break out of this constant discard and recycling that the narcissist does to so many of their victims, and you can begin to build a life where you're really happy.